They used my Netflix password but blocked my number. I blocked their access to my streaming fortune. The words still echo in my mind as I sit in my corner office overlooking Silicon Valley, watching the same people who once treated me like their personal ATM scramble to understand how the woman they discarded became the CEO of the platform they're now desperately trying to access. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Sarah Chin, and 6 months ago I was sleeping on my sister's couch, wondering how my life had spiraled so completely out of control. Today, I'm the youngest female CEO in streaming technology, worth more money than my family could have ever imagined. But this story isn't really about money. It's about respect, boundaries, and what happens when people mistake kindness for weakness. It started 3 years ago, when I moved back to Portland to help my family. My younger brother Marcus had just graduated college, with a mountain of debt and no job prospects. My sister Emma was going through a messy divorce and struggling to support her 2 kids alone. My parents, though they'd never admit it, were quietly drowning in medical bills from Dad's heart surgery the year before. I had been working as a software engineer for a mid-sized tech company in Seattle, making decent money but nothing extraordinary. When my family needed help, I didn't hesitate. I liquidated my small savings, moved into a cramped apartment near my childhood home, and became everyone's financial safety net. The streaming passwords started innocently enough. Marcus mentioned he couldn't afford Netflix while job hunting, so I added him to my account. Emma's kids wanted Disney Plus, and with her tight budget, I figured it was the least I could do. Soon my parents were using my Hulu for their evening shows, and before I knew it, I was paying for premium subscriptions to every streaming service imaginable. Netflix, Disney Plus, Hulu, HBO Max, Amazon Prime, Apple TV, Spotify, YouTube Premium, even niche services like Crunchyroll and Criterion Channel. My monthly streaming bills climbed to over $300, but whenever someone in my family wanted access to something new, I just added another subscription. It was easier than listening to them complain about missing their favorite shows. The requests multiplied like rabbits. Marcus needed help with his car payment because he was almost going to get a job. Emma required emergency babysitting money because her ex-husband was late with child support again. Mom and Dad needed assistance with their mortgage when Dad's medical leave ended earlier than expected. I found myself working overtime constantly, taking on freelance coding projects in the evenings, and slowly draining what little savings I had left. But every time I considered saying no, guilt would crush any resistance I might have mustered. These were the people who had raised me, supported me through college, celebrated my achievements. How could I turn my back on them when they needed me most? The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening in March. I had been working on a particularly challenging project for nearly 18 hours straight, debugging code that seemed determined to mock my every effort. My eyes burned from staring at screens, my back ached from hunching over my laptop, and I hadn't eaten anything substantial since breakfast. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Sarah, can you add your credit card to my Netflix account? I want to rent some new movies tonight, and my card got declined." I stared at the message, exhaustion making my vision blur. Adding a credit card to his profile meant he could make unlimited purchases on my account. Rental fees, premium upgrades, whatever he wanted. After months of paying for everyone's entertainment, he was now asking for carte blanche access to spend my money however he pleased. I typed back, "Marcus, I'm already paying for your Netflix subscription. Can't you watch something that's included?" His response came immediately. "Come on, Sarah, it's just a few movies. You make good money. Don't be cheap." Don't be cheap. The words stung more than he probably intended. I was paying for his Netflix, his Spotify, his Disney Plus, and had just covered his car insurance the week before because he claimed he was between jobs again. Yet asking him to stick to the content I was already paying for made me cheap. Before I could respond, another text popped up from Emma. "Hey, can you increase the screen limit on Disney Plus? The kids' friends are over and they want to watch different shows. Also, we're out of data for the month. Can you upgrade our phone plan?" Then my mother chimed in. Sarah, honey, your father and I want to watch that new documentary on Amazon, but it says we need to rent it. Can you just put your card on our account? It's only $5. 3 separate requests for more money in the span of 5 minutes. I closed my laptop and walked to my bathroom, staring at my reflection in the mirror. When had I become this person? When had my worth to my family become entirely tied to my ability to pay for their wants and needs? I had been supporting Marcus for 8 months while he claimed to look for work, yet every time I drove past the local bars, I saw his car parked outside. Emma constantly needed emergency money, but somehow always had funds for expensive coffee runs and takeout meals. My parents pleaded poverty while simultaneously planning a weekend trip to visit my aunt in California. The truth I had been avoiding crystallized in that moment. They weren't struggling to survive. They were struggling to maintain lifestyles they couldn't afford, and I had become their enabler. I picked up my phone and typed carefully. I need to talk to everyone this weekend about the financial arrangements we've had. Things need to change. Marcus responded first. What do you mean? You're not cutting us off, are you? We're family. Emma was more direct. Sarah, if this is about money, you know we'll pay you back when things get better. My parents' response was the one that hurt most. Sweetheart, we never ask you to do so much. If it's become a burden, we understand. But that was the problem. They had asked. Constantly. And every time I showed the slightest hesitation, I was made to feel selfish for having boundaries. I spent the rest of the week preparing for what I knew would be a difficult conversation. I made spreadsheets showing exactly how much I had spent supporting everyone over the past year. Streaming services, phone bills, car payments, insurance, emergency groceries, babysitting money, medical copays, and dozens of other expenses I had covered without question. The total was staggering: $43,000 in less than 12 months. Nearly my entire take-home salary had gone to supporting other people's lives while my own savings account dwindled to double digits. Saturday arrived gray and drizzly, typical Pacific Northwest weather that matched my mood perfectly. I had invited everyone to my apartment for what I diplomatically called a family meeting. The tension was obvious from the moment they walked in. Marcus avoided eye contact, Emma checked her phone constantly, and my parents sat stiffly on my secondhand couch, clearly uncomfortable. I started with the streaming services, thinking it would be the easiest topic. I've been thinking about the various subscriptions I'm paying for, and I need to make some changes. I'm going to be canceling some services and removing shared access to others. The reaction was immediate and intense. Marcus actually laughed, a bitter sound that filled my small living room. You're seriously going to cut off our Netflix over a few dollars a month? It's not just Netflix, I replied, pulling out my printed statements. It's Netflix, Disney Plus, Hulu, HBO Max, Amazon Prime, Apple TV, Spotify for 3 people, YouTube Premium, and 6 other services. It's $347 a month in streaming bills alone. Emma's mouth dropped open. That can't be.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story.
Right. I handed her the papers. See for yourself. This doesn't include the phone bills I've been covering, or the car payments, or the emergency expenses. In the past 12 months, I've given this family over $40,000. The silence that followed was deafening. My father was the first to speak, his voice quiet and strained. Sarah, we had no idea it was that much. Mom nodded vigorously. Honey, if we had known you were struggling financially, we never would have accepted so much help. But I wasn't struggling financially until I started supporting everyone else, I said, trying to keep my voice level. I was doing fine on my own. I had savings, I was paying down my student loans, I was even starting to invest for retirement. Now I can barely cover my own rent. Marcus leaned forward, his expression growing defensive. So what, you're just going to abandon your family? Cut us off completely? I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm asking you to take responsibility for your own expenses. You're 25 years old, Marcus. You've been out of college for 3 years. When are you planning to actually support yourself? His face flushed red. It's not that easy, Sarah. The job market is terrible. Do you know how hard it is out there? Hard enough that you can spend 4 nights a week at Murphy's Bar, but not hard enough to take the retail job at Target that's been posted for months? The accusation hung in the air between us. Emma shifted uncomfortably, clearly recognizing her own patterns in the exchange. How did you know about Murphy's? Because I drive past it on my way home from work, and your car is there constantly. Same with the coffee shop, the movie theater, the mall. You're not looking for work, Marcus. You're looking for someone else to pay for your lifestyle? The anger in his eyes was unmistakable now. You think you're so much better than us because you have some tech job. Newsflash, Sarah. Not everyone wants to spend their life staring at a computer screen. I never said I was better than anyone. But I also never said I was going to support grown adults indefinitely while they make no effort to support themselves. Emma finally joined the conversation, her voice tight with frustration. This is really about the streaming passwords? You're going to destroy our family relationships over entertainment subscriptions? This isn't about entertainment, Emma. This is about respect. When I set a boundary, like asking Marcus to stick to the content that's already included instead of renting additional movies, I get called cheap. When I express concern about the amount of money I'm spending, I get guilt-tripped about family loyalty. When exactly am I allowed to prioritize my own financial security? You make more money than any of us, she shot back. What's $40,000 to you? It's my entire savings account, I replied simply. It's my emergency fund, my retirement contributions, my ability to eventually buy a house or start a family of my own. It's my future, and I've been giving it away to fund everyone else's present. My mother reached across the coffee table and took my hand. Sarah, sweetheart, we never wanted you to sacrifice your future for us. Then why did you keep asking for more money? I asked, my voice finally cracking with the emotion I'd been holding back. Every time I helped with one thing, there was immediately another emergency, another request, another crisis that only I could solve. The room fell silent again. I could see them processing my words, perhaps for the first time really considering the cumulative impact of their constant requests. Marcus broke the silence, but his tone had shifted from defensive to manipulative. Look, if money is really that tight for you, maybe you should look for a better job. I hear tech companies in California pay way more than what you're making here. The suggestion was so perfectly Marcus that I almost smiled despite everything. Even in a conversation about him taking responsibility for his own expenses, he was trying to find a way to make his problems mine to solve. I'm not moving to California so I can afford to continue subsidizing your lifestyle, I said firmly. I'm staying here, and I'm establishing boundaries. Starting Monday, everyone will need to set up their own streaming accounts. I'll cover the family phone plan for 1 more month to give you time to find your own carrier. After that, you're on your own. Dad nodded slowly. That's fair, Sarah. More than fair, actually. We should have been handling our own expenses from the beginning. But Emma and Marcus weren't ready to accept the new reality. Emma's expression had hardened into something I'd never seen before. You know what, Sarah? Fine. If you want to be selfish, go ahead. But don't come crying to us when you need family support someday. The threat was clear, and it revealed something ugly that had probably been lurking beneath the surface for months. My value to them wasn't as a sister or daughter. It was as a financial resource. Marcus stood up abruptly. This is unbelievable. We're supposed to be family, but you're treating us like strangers. Mom, Dad, are you really going to let her cut us off like this? My parents exchanged a long look. Finally, Mom spoke. Marcus, your sister has been incredibly generous. More generous than we had any right to expect. If she needs to pull back financially, we need to respect that. But what about the Disney Plus for the kids? Emma demanded. You're really going to punish children because you're mad at their mother? I looked at my sister, this woman I had been supporting for over a year, and felt a deep sadness settle over me. I'm not punishing anyone, Emma. I'm asking you to pay for your own family's entertainment subscriptions. If you can't afford Disney Plus for your kids, maybe you should evaluate your spending priorities instead of expecting me to fund them. The meeting deteriorated from there. Marcus stormed out, muttering about ungrateful family members. Emma gathered her things with theatrical huffs and dramatic sighs, making sure everyone knew how betrayed she felt. My parents stayed longer, offering awkward apologies and promises to manage their own expenses going forward. But the damage was done. I could see it in their eyes, the shift in how they viewed me. I had gone from being the generous daughter who always came through to being the selfish sister who chose money over family. That night, I changed all my streaming passwords and removed everyone from my accounts. It was a small action, but it felt monumental. For the first time in over a year, my Netflix recommendations might actually reflect my viewing preferences, instead of Marcus's addiction to action movies and Emma's kids' cartoon marathons. The fallout was swift and brutal. Emma blocked my number after I declined to pay for her son's birthday party entertainment. Marcus started spreading stories about how I had abandoned the family to anyone who would listen. Even my parents, while more understanding, became distant and formal in our interactions. The isolation was profound. I had spent so much time and energy managing everyone else's problems that I had neglected my own friendships and interests. Now, cut off from my family and with few close relationships outside of work, I found myself truly alone for the first time in years. The loneliness was crushing. I would come home to my empty apartment, make dinner for one, and watch Netflix shows without interruption, but the silence felt oppressive rather than peaceful. I had gotten what I thought I wanted, financial independence and personal boundaries, but the cost was higher than I had anticipated. Weeks passed without contact from any of them. No calls, no texts, no invitations to family gatherings I wasn't even sure were happening anymore. It was as if I had never existed. As if 3 years of financial support and emotional investment meant nothing once the money stopped flowing. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening in April. I was working late again, trying to debug a particularly stubborn piece of code for a client project, when I decided to take a break and check social media. Emma had posted photos from Marcus's birthday dinner at an expensive steakhouse downtown. The whole family was there, laughing and celebrating, raising glasses of what looked like top-shelf whiskey. The caption read, "Amazing family dinner tonight. So grateful for the people who really matter and who are always there for each other. Blood is thicker than water." I stared at the photos, feeling physically sick. These people who claimed they couldn't afford their own streaming services had just spent more on one dinner than I had been asking them to contribute monthly for their entertainment. The real message was clear. They could afford their own expenses when they wanted to. They just preferred to have me pay for them. But what hurt most was the deliberate exclusion. This wasn't just about setting boundaries anymore. This was punishment for daring to prioritize my own financial well-being over their convenience. I closed my laptop and walked to my bathroom, staring at my reflection like I had so many times over the past few months. But this time, instead of seeing an exhausted woman questioning her choices, I saw someone who had finally learned an important lesson about her own worth. I wasn't angry anymore. I was determined. That weekend, I started working on something that had been percolating in the back of my mind for months. During all those late nights coding for freelance clients, I had noticed a gap in the streaming market that none of the major players were addressing effectively. Small content creators were struggling to monetize their work, while viewers were growing frustrated with the fragmented landscape of multiple subscriptions and exclusive content. What if there was a platform that aggregated smaller creators and independent content, offering viewers a single subscription that actually supported the artists directly? What if instead of feeding money to massive corporations, people could pay one fee and know that their subscription was going directly to the people creating the content they loved? I had been sketching out the technical architecture for weeks, but now I threw myself into it completely. I spent every evening and weekend building what would eventually become StreamShare, a platform that would revolutionize how independent creators monetize their content and how viewers discovered new artists. The coding was complex, but it was also therapeutic. Every line of code was a step toward building something meaningful, something that belonged entirely to me. No one could take this away, no one could demand access to it, no one could make me feel guilty for protecting it. I worked in secret for 2 months, pouring every spare moment into development. I used my savings to hire a freelance designer for the user interface and a legal consultant to help with content licensing agreements. Slowly, methodically, I built something extraordinary. The breakthrough came when I reached out to Jake Morrison, a former colleague from Seattle who had left our company to start his own venture capital firm. Jake had always been impressed with my technical skills, And when I pitched him the StreamShare concept, his enthusiasm was immediate and infectious. We met at a trendy coffee shop in downtown Portland, the kind of place that charged $7 for a latte and attracted the city's creative professionals. I showed him my prototype on my laptop, walking through the user experience and explaining the revenue model that would benefit creators far more than existing platforms. Jake leaned back in his chair, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Sarah, this is brilliant. You're solving a real problem that no one else is addressing effectively. The market timing is perfect too, with all the subscription fatigue people are experiencing." He paused, studying the screen more carefully. "How far along are you with development?" "About 70% complete for the minimum viable product. I need funding for server infrastructure, content licensing agreements, and marketing to attract initial creators and users." Jake nodded thoughtfully. "What are you thinking in terms of investment?" I had prepared for this question, but actually saying the number out loud still felt surreal. "I'm looking for $500,000 in seed. Funding for 15% equity." Jake didn't hesitate. "I'm in. But I want to introduce you to some other investors who specialize in streaming technology. This could be much bigger than $500,000 if you're open to scaling rapidly." 6 weeks later, I was sitting in a conference room in San Francisco, presenting StreamShare to a panel of investors who collectively managed over $2 billion in tech investments. The presentation went better than I had dared to hope. Questions were sharp but enthusiastic, and by the end of the meeting I had preliminary commitments for $2.8 million in Series A funding. The lead investor, Patricia Wong from Meridian Ventures, approached me after the others had filed out. "Sarah, I've been investing in streaming technology for 8 years, and this is the most innovative approach I've seen to the creator monetization problem. We'd like to offer you the lead position in this round, and I'd like to discuss additional opportunities as well." Additional opportunities turned out to be the chance to acquire 3 smaller streaming platforms that were struggling with monetization, giving StreamShare an immediate content library and user base. Within 4 months of that first coffee meeting with Jake, I was the CEO of a company valued at $12 million. The transformation happened so quickly that I sometimes felt like I was living someone else's life. I moved to a modern apartment in San Francisco's Mission District, hired a team of 12 employees, and found myself featured in TechCrunch articles about promising female entrepreneurs in the streaming space. But the most satisfying moment came when I was testing StreamShare's recommendation algorithm and discovered that several Portland-based content creators had signed up for the platform. Independent filmmakers, musicians, podcasters, and digital artists who were tired of being lost in the noise of massive platforms. Among them was someone unexpected. Marcus had uploaded a series of comedy sketches that were actually quite good. Apparently, during all those months I thought he was just wasting time, he had been developing his creative skills. The irony wasn't lost on me that he was now using a platform I had created to try to make money from his content. I left his content on the platform, of course. StreamShare was built to support creators regardless of personal relationships. But I also set up alerts so I would know if he or anyone else from my family discovered the connection between the platform and their former financial support system. The alert triggered on a Tuesday morning in September. Marcus had apparently done some research after his first StreamShare payment and discovered that the CEO listed on the platform was Sarah Chen, his sister. The sister he hadn't spoken to in 6 months. The sister he had blocked on social media and excluded from family gatherings. My assistant informed me that someone named Marcus Chen was requesting a meeting with me, claiming to be a family member. I almost laughed at the transparent attempt to leverage our relationship now that he realized I might be useful again. But I was curious about what he would say, how he would try to rebuild a bridge he had burned so thoroughly. I agreed to a video call for the following day, partly for closure and partly for entertainment. Marcus appeared on my screen looking nervous and underdressed for what he clearly thought was an important business meeting. He had attempted to style his hair professionally, but I could see he was still in his childhood bedroom at my parents' house. "Sarah," he began, then paused, clearly unsure how to proceed. Ms. Chen, thank you for taking this meeting. Hello, Marcus." I kept my voice neutral and professional. "My assistant mentioned you wanted to discuss your content on StreamShare." "Yes, exactly. I've been using your platform for a few months now, and I have to say, it's incredible what you've built. The creator support tools are unlike anything else out there." I nodded. We're proud of what we've accomplished. StreamShare was designed specifically to address the challenges independent creators face with monetization and discovery. He shifted uncomfortably, clearly struggling with how to broach the personal aspects of our relationship. Sarah, I have to ask, how long have you been working on this? When we last talked, you were still doing freelance coding. StreamShare launched 3 months ago, but I've been developing the concept for over a year. Sometimes, the best ideas come from personal experience with market gaps. Marcus's eyes widened as he calculated the timeline. You started building this while you were still supporting all of us financially? The question hung in the air between us. I could see him processing the implications, realizing that while he was calling me cheap for not wanting to fund his movie rentals, I was building a multi-million-dollar company in my spare time. I was working on several projects during that period, I replied diplomatically. StreamShare was one of them. The video call continued for another 10 minutes, with Marcus alternating between awkward small talk and transparent attempts to gauge my wealth and success. He mentioned several times how much he regretted the way our last conversation had ended, how family should stick together, how proud everyone would be of my achievements. But he never actually apologized. Not for the months of financial exploitation, not for blocking my number, not for excluding me from family events. He regretted the consequences of his actions, but not the actions themselves. When the call ended, I felt a profound sense of closure. The desperate need for their approval and acceptance that had driven me to sacrifice my financial security was completely gone. I had built something meaningful without them, proven my worth without their validation, created a life that fulfilled me without their participation. That evening, I was reviewing user engagement metrics when Patricia Wong called with unexpected news. Sarah, I just got off a call with Netflix's business development team. They're interested in discussing a potential acquisition of StreamShare. The offer, when it came 2 weeks later, was staggering. Netflix wanted to purchase StreamShare for $87 million, with the option for me to stay on as head of their new independent creator division. It was more money than I had ever imagined having, and the opportunity to influence creator support at the largest streaming platform in the world. But there was something poetic about the timing. Netflix, the service that had started this entire journey when Marcus asked me to add my credit card to his account. The platform that had represented my family's assumption that my money should fund their entertainment without question or gratitude. Now Netflix wanted to pay me more money than my family could spend in several lifetimes to acquire the company I had built, while they were punishing me for setting financial boundaries. I accepted the offer. The acquisition announcement generated significant media attention, with articles in major tech publications highlighting StreamShare's innovative approach to creator monetization. Several interviews focused on my background as a relatively unknown female engineer who had built a successful startup in less than 2 years. One article in particular caught my attention, published in Portland's local business journal, with the headline, "Local Tech Entrepreneur Sells Streaming Startup to Netflix for $87 million." The article included quotes from several Portland tech leaders praising the acquisition and speculating about what my success might mean for the local startup ecosystem. I wondered if my family had seen the coverage. Portland wasn't a huge city, and an $87 million acquisition was significant local news. But I didn't reach out to find out, and no one contacted me directly. The acquisition process took 3 months to complete, during which I split my time between San Francisco and Los Angeles, working with Netflix's integration team to transition StreamShare's technology and content partnerships. The work was fascinating and fulfilling, exactly the kind of creative challenge I had always hoped to tackle in my career. On the day the acquisition officially closed, I found myself back in Portland for a brief visit, settling some final business affairs before making my move to Los Angeles permanent. I was walking through downtown when I passed Murphy's Bar, the same establishment where I had so often seen Marcus's car during his supposed job search period. On impulse, I decided to go in. It was early evening, happy hour, and the place was moderately crowded with after-work professionals and local regulars. I ordered a glass of wine and found a quiet corner table where I could observe without being noticed. 20 minutes later, Marcus walked in with 2 friends I recognized from high school. They settled at a table near the bar, ordering beers, and immediately launching into an animated conversation about sports and local gossip. I listened to their conversation, curious about this version of my brother that existed independently of our family dynamics. To my surprise, he was actually quite engaging and funny, telling stories that had his friends laughing genuinely. This was the person he could have been if he hadn't spent so much energy trying to avoid responsibility. One of his friends mentioned seeing the article about my acquisition, not realizing I was Marcus's sister. $87 million, the friend said, shaking his head in amazement. Can you imagine having that kind of money? What would you even do with it? Marcus shifted uncomfortably, taking a long drink of his beer before responding. I actually know her. Sarah Chen. She's my sister. The revelation stunned his friends into silence. After a moment, one of them found his voice. Your sister sold a company to Netflix for $87 million? Dude, why are you working at the warehouse if your sister is that rich? Marcus's discomfort was obvious. It's complicated. We haven't talked in a while. A while? His other friend pressed. You could probably retire if you just called her and apologized for whatever fight you had. I watched Marcus struggle with how to explain the situation without admitting to the months of financial exploitation that had preceded our estrangement. You don't understand. Sarah's different now. Success changed her. She's not the same person she used to be. The words stung, but they also clarified something important. Marcus genuinely believed that I had changed, that success had somehow corrupted the generous sister he remembered. He couldn't conceive that the generous sister had been a person with boundaries, who had temporarily abandoned them to keep peace in the family. I finished my wine and left the bar without revealing myself. There was nothing to be gained from confronting Marcus or correcting his narrative. He would believe what he needed to believe to avoid examining his own behavior. But walking back to my hotel, I realized something profound had shifted. The last vestige of hurt and resentment I had been carrying was gone, replaced by something that felt almost like pity. Marcus was still the same person he had always been, working a job he didn't enjoy, spending his evenings in the same bar, telling the same stories to the same friends. I was no longer that person. I had built something meaningful, contributed to an industry I cared about, and created opportunities for independent artists to monetize their creativity. I had grown and evolved and become someone I was genuinely proud to be. The woman who had slept on her sister's couch 6 months earlier was gone forever, replaced by someone stronger, more confident, and infinitely more aware of her own worth. My flight to Los Angeles was the next morning. As the plane lifted off from Portland International Airport, I looked down at the city where I had learned such painful but necessary lessons about family, boundaries, and self-respect. I thought about the streaming passwords that had started everything, such a small thing that had revealed such enormous truths about how my family viewed my value. I thought about the $43,000 I had spent trying to buy their love and appreciation, money that could never have purchased what I really needed, their respect. Most of all, I thought about the future I was building, not as someone's financial safety net or emotional support system, but as an independent woman who had learned to value herself appropriately. They had used my Netflix password, but I had used their rejection to build something far more valuable than any streaming service could provide. I had built a life that belonged entirely to me, funded by my own success and defined by my own choices. As we climbed above the clouds, Portland disappearing beneath us, I smiled and opened my laptop to review the presentation I would be giving the next day to Netflix's executive team about expanding creator support programs globally. The old Sarah would have felt guilty about leaving her family behind. The new Sarah, Sarah Chen, CEO and entrepreneur, felt only excitement about the limitless possibilities that lay ahead. They had blocked my number when I stopped funding their lifestyle. Now they would have to watch from a distance as I built an empire they could never access, no matter how many passwords they tried to guess. The Netflix headquarters in Los Gatos felt like stepping into the future. Glass walls, open collaborative spaces, and screens everywhere displaying content from around the world. As the newest member of their executive team, I had been given an office on the 23rd floor with a view that stretched across Silicon Valley. The nameplate on my door read, Sarah Chen, VP of Independent Creator Relations, in sleek modern font. 6 months had passed since the acquisition, and I had thrown myself into transforming how Netflix supported independent creators. The StreamShare integration had exceeded all projections, with creator earnings up 400% and user engagement reaching record highs. More importantly, we had created something that felt revolutionary in the streaming space, a platform where artists could actually make a living from their creativity. My assistant Jessica knocked on my office door, interrupting my review of quarterly metrics. "Sarah, you have a visitor downstairs. Someone from your family. She says her name is Emma Cooper and that it's urgent." The name hit me like cold water. Emma had taken her ex-husband's name back after the divorce, something I had learned from social media stalking during my lonelier moments in Portland. The fact that she was here, at Netflix headquarters, meant she had done enough research to track down my workplace and convince security to contact me. I stared out my office window, watching employees walk between buildings on the campus below. The old Sarah would have panicked, would have immediately wondered what emergency required my intervention. The new Sarah felt only curiosity mixed with a healthy dose of wariness. "Tell security I'll be down in 10 minutes, I said to Jessica, and ask them to have her wait in conference room B, not the main lobby. I took my time gathering my thoughts, checking my appearance in the small mirror I kept in my desk drawer. The woman looking back at me wore a tailored blazer that cost more than I used to spend on clothes in 6 months. My hair was professionally styled, my makeup subtle but polished. I looked like exactly what I was, a successful executive who belonged in these surroundings. Conference room B was a smaller space we used for sensitive meetings, with soundproof walls and no windows facing the main corridors. Emma was sitting at the oval table when I entered, and the years since our last meeting had not been kind to her. She looked older, more worn down, with the particular exhaustion that comes from chronic stress and financial pressure. "Hello, Emma," I said, taking a seat across from her but not offering any physical greeting. "This is unexpected." "Sarah," she began, then paused, clearly struggling with how to proceed. "You look amazing. Really successful and confident. I saw the articles about the Netflix acquisition. $87 million. I can barely wrap my head around that number." I waited, not offering any response that might make this easier for her. Emma had blocked my number, excluded me from family events, and made it clear that my value was entirely transactional. She could explain why she was here without my help. "I need to talk to you about something important," she continued, her voice becoming more strained. "About the kids, actually. About their future and some opportunities that have come up." The mention of her children immediately put me on guard. Emma had always been willing to use her kids as emotional leverage, knowing that my affection for them was genuine even when my relationship with her had become complicated. "What about the kids?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "Well, Kevin is 15 now, and he's incredibly talented at creating content. Videos, music, digital art. He's been posting on TikTok and YouTube, and some of his stuff has gotten really good engagement. And Lisa, she's 13, but she's already showing interest in following in his footsteps." I could see where this was going, but I let her continue building her case. "The thing is," Emma said, leaning forward with growing enthusiasm, "they need better equipment, professional coaching, maybe even some kind of management representation. There are companies that specialize in developing young talent for social media careers, but they're expensive. Like, really expensive." "How expensive?" I asked, though I suspected I already knew the answer would be substantial. "The program we're looking at costs $50,000 for the first year." "But Sarah, this could be life-changing for them. Kevin's already making a little money from his content, and the program director thinks he could be earning 6 figures within 2 years if he gets the right support." $50,000. The same amount Marcus and Lilia had demanded for their cruise in the original story I had heard. The parallel was almost poetic. "And you want me to pay for this program?" I said. It wasn't a question. Emma's facade of casual conversation dropped away, revealing the desperation underneath. "Sarah, I know things ended badly between us. I know we hurt your feelings and handled everything wrong. But this isn't about us. This is about giving Kevin and Lisa opportunities that could change their entire lives." The emotional manipulation was expertly deployed. Frame the request as being about the children's welfare, rather than her inability to manage her finances. Make me the villain if I refuse to fund their dreams. Minimize our past conflict as hurt feelings, rather than systematic financial exploitation. "Emma, I said carefully. What makes you think I would be willing to invest in this program? Because your family, she replied immediately. Because despite everything that happened, I know you love those kids. And because $50,000 is nothing to you now, you probably spend more than that on your car. The assumption that my money should be available to solve her problems was breathtaking in its audacity. She hadn't spoken to me in over a year, had actively excluded me from family events, but somehow my financial success created an obligation to fund her children's dreams. Tell me about your current financial situation, I said. What's your monthly income, and what are your major expenses? Emma shifted uncomfortably. I don't see how that's relevant. This is about an investment in the kids' future. It's relevant because I'm trying to understand why you can't fund this opportunity yourself. You're working, aren't you? Yes, I'm working. I'm managing a retail store now, and the pay is decent. But between rent and utilities and food and all the other expenses of raising two teenagers, there's never anything left over for extras like this. What about their father? Doesn't he pay child support? Emma's expression darkened. Richard pays the minimum required by the court order, and even that's often late. He's got his own financial problems. So you're essentially a single mother supporting two teenagers on a retail manager's salary, I summarized. That must be incredibly difficult. It is, she agreed, seeming encouraged by what she interpreted as sympathy. That's why this opportunity is so important. If Kevin can build a successful content creation career, it could provide financial security for our whole family. And if the program doesn't work out, if Kevin doesn't become the next viral sensation, what happens to the $50,000? Emma looked confused by the question. I don't understand. The program has a great track record. They've worked with lots of successful creators. But there are no guarantees, right? Content creation is unpredictable. Even with professional coaching and expensive equipment, there's no certainty that Kevin will be able to build a sustainable income from social media. Well, no, there are never guarantees with anything creative, she admitted reluctantly. But you have to take chances sometimes. You have to invest in potential. I leaned back in my chair, studying my sister across the table. The woman who had called me selfish for setting financial boundaries was now asking me to gamble $50,000 on the possibility that her teenage son might become a successful content creator. Emma, I said finally, do you remember the last conversation we had before I moved to San Francisco? Her face flushed slightly. Things were said in anger that probably shouldn't have been said. We were all stressed about money and not thinking clearly. You told me that I was being selfish for not wanting to continue paying for everyone's streaming services. You said that if I needed more money, I should get a better job. You blocked my number and excluded me from family events because I asked you to pay for your own Disney Plus subscription. I know, and I've regretted that ever since. We handled everything wrong. But now that I do have more money, you expect me to hand over $50,000 without question? You see no irony in that? Emma's composure finally cracked, revealing the anger that had been simmering beneath her carefully constructed appeal. Look, I came here to ask for help with my children's future, not to relitigate old family drama. Are you going to help them or not? The ultimatum was classic Emma, attempting to shortcut past any discussion of accountability or changed behavior by demanding an immediate yes or no answer. But I had learned too much about power dynamics to be rushed into a decision by manufactured urgency. I'm going to need more information before I can make any decision, I said calmly. I'd want to see a detailed breakdown of the program costs, meet with the company representatives, and understand exactly what services they're providing for $50,000. Emma's eyes lit up with hope. So you're considering it? I'm considering whether this represents a legitimate investment opportunity or an expensive gamble marketed to desperate parents. There's a significant difference. We spent the next hour going through details about the content creation program. The more Emma explained, the more skeptical I became. The company promised professional coaching, equipment packages, and industry connections, but their success stories were vague, and their refund policy was virtually non-existent. It had all the hallmarks of a predatory business targeting parents' dreams for their children. More concerning was Emma's complete inability to articulate any backup plan. She had pinned her family's financial hopes on this single expensive program, with no consideration of alternatives or consequences if it failed to deliver results. When our meeting finally ended, I promised to research the company and provide an answer within a week. Emma seemed satisfied with this timeline, apparently confident that my investigation would validate her decision and lead to a check for $50,000. But as I watched her leave the building, I felt a familiar sadness about the patterns that seemed destined to repeat themselves. Emma had learned nothing from our previous conflicts about boundaries and financial responsibility. She still viewed my success as her solution, my money as her safety net, my achievements as resources she was entitled to access. That evening, I called Jake Morrison, my former colleague, who had helped secure the initial investment for StreamShare. Jake had become more than a business partner over the past year. He was one of the few people who understood the complex dynamics of sudden wealth and family expectations. We met at a quiet restaurant in Palo Alto, the kind of place where tech executives could have sensitive conversations without being overheard by competitors or reporters. Jake listened patiently as I described Emma's visit and her request for funding. "Let me guess," he said when I finished the story. "This content creation program promises to turn her teenage son into the next big social media star for the low price of $50,000. How did you know?" I asked, surprised by his immediate recognition of the scenario. "Because I've seen the same pitch 3 times in the past year. Different companies, same basic model. They target parents of kids who show any creative talent, promising fame and fortune in exchange for substantial upfront payments. The success rate is essentially 0. Jake pulled out his phone and showed me several articles about similar programs that had been investigated for fraudulent practices. Parents spending tens of thousands of dollars for coaching that consisted mainly of generic advice available free on YouTube, equipment packages that could be assembled for a fraction of the quoted price, and industry connections that turned out to be meaningless. So this is basically a scam targeting parents' hopes for their children? I asked. Not technically a scam, because they do provide some services. But it's definitely predatory, and the outcomes rarely justify the investment. The companies know that desperate parents will pay almost anything if they believe it might give their kids a chance at success. I thought about Kevin, Emma's 15-year-old son, who was apparently showing talent for content creation. He was a good kid, creative and intelligent, but also typical of his generation in believing that social media fame was a viable career path. The idea that $50,000 worth of coaching could guarantee his success was both naive and dangerous. "What would you do if it was your family?" I asked Jake. "I'd offer to help in ways that actually support the kid's development without enriching predatory companies. If Kevin is genuinely talented, there are much more cost-effective ways to help him build skills and create content." Jake was right, of course. If I wanted to support my nephew's creative development, there were numerous alternatives that would provide real value without requiring Emma to mortgage her future on false promises. I spent the next few days researching both the company Emma had mentioned and the broader landscape of content creator education. The results confirmed Jake's assessment. The expensive programs consistently failed to deliver meaningful results, while many successful creators had built their audiences using free resources and persistent effort. Meanwhile, my regular work at Netflix continued to provide fascinating insights into what actually drove success in content creation. The StreamShare integration had given me access to data from thousands of independent creators, and the patterns were clear. Sustainable success came from consistent quality content, genuine audience engagement, and gradual skill development over time. There were no shortcuts, and expensive coaching rarely made a significant difference. When the week deadline arrived, I called Emma to arrange another meeting. This time, I suggested meeting at a coffee shop in downtown Portland, wanting to have the conversation on neutral ground rather than in my intimidating corporate environment. Emma arrived looking hopeful and excited, clearly expecting good news. She had brought a folder full of additional materials about the content creation program, probably anticipating that I would want to review contracts before writing a check. "I've done extensive research on the company you mentioned," I began carefully. "Unfortunately, my investigation raised some serious concerns about their business practices and success rates." Emma's face fell immediately. What kind of concerns? I spent the next 20 minutes walking through my findings. The lack of verifiable success stories, the predatory targeting of parents, the minimal refund policies, and the availability of equivalent resources at much lower costs. Emma listened with growing frustration, clearly resenting having her solution challenged with inconvenient facts. "So you're saying Kevin doesn't have talent?" she demanded when I finished my presentation. "You're saying he shouldn't pursue his dreams because it's too risky?" "I'm saying that $50,000 won't buy him talent or guarantee him success. If Kevin is genuinely gifted at content creation, there are much better ways to support his development that don't require mortgaging your financial future." "Like what?" Emma's tone was defensive now, interpreting my criticism of the program as an attack on her parenting judgment. "Like investing in quality equipment that he actually needs, not overpriced packages from coaching companies. Like connecting him with successful local creators who could provide mentorship. Like helping him develop business skills alongside his creative abilities. Like giving him a realistic timeline for building an audience instead of promising overnight success." Emma stared at me across the coffee shop table, processing my suggestions with visible disappointment. She had come here expecting me to solve her problems with money, not advice about alternative approaches that would require more effort from her. "But those things would take years," she said finally. "This program could get him established much faster. There are no shortcuts to building a sustainable creative career, Emma. The people selling shortcuts are usually selling false hope to desperate parents. So you're not going to help at all?" The question was loaded with accusation and self-pity. "I'm not going to give you $50,000 to spend on a predatory program that won't help Kevin," I clarified. "But I am willing to support his creative development in more meaningful ways." I pulled out my own folder, containing research I had done on legitimate resources for young content creators. "I'm willing to fund a professional quality camera setup, editing software, and lighting equipment that Kevin actually needs. I'm also willing to connect him with creators in Netflix's independent program who could provide real mentorship and industry insights." Emma flipped through the materials I had prepared, her expression growing increasingly frustrated. "This isn't the same thing. This doesn't give him the professional coaching and industry connections. The professional coaching consists mainly of advice that's available free online, and the industry connections are largely meaningless. What I'm offering provides actual tools and real relationships that could help him build skills and an audience over time. But what if this program really could make him successful? What if you're wrong and I'm missing his one chance?" The fear in her voice was genuine, and I felt a pang of sympathy for the impossible position parents faced in trying to support their children's dreams in an increasingly complex digital economy. But sympathy didn't change the facts about predatory business practices. "Emma," I said gently, "if Kevin has real talent and dedication, he'll find ways to succeed with or without expensive coaching programs. If he doesn't have those qualities, no amount of professional development will create them for him." She closed the folder I had given her without really examining the contents. "I appreciate the research, but I think you're being overly cautious. Sometimes you have to take risks to achieve big dreams. And sometimes people take advantage of parents' love for their children by selling expensive dreams that they can't deliver," I replied. "I'm not going to be part of that." Emma stood up abruptly, gathering her things with sharp, angry movements. "Fine. I should have known you'd find reasons to say no. You've gotten really good at protecting your money since you became rich." The accusations stung, but not in the way she intended. What hurt was the realization that Emma genuinely believed my refusal to fund a questionable program meant I didn't care about her children's welfare. She couldn't distinguish between financial responsibility and emotional support. "Emma," I called as she reached the door. "My offer for the equipment and mentorship connections stands. If you change your mind about the program, I'm still willing to help Kevin in practical ways." She paused but didn't turn around. "Kevin deserves more than your leftover charity, Sarah. He deserves someone who believes in his potential enough to invest in it properly." Then she was gone, leaving me alone at the coffee shop table with research materials and the familiar ache of family relationships that seemed destined to repeat destructive patterns. I drove back to San Francisco that evening, processing the conversation and its implications. Emma's visit had clarified something important about the ongoing dynamics with my family. They didn't want my advice, my connections, or my expertise. They wanted my money, deployed exactly as they specified, without questions or conditions. My success had not changed their fundamental view of our relationship. If anything, it had intensified their belief that I owed them financial support. The only difference was that the amounts had grown proportional to my wealth. Back in my Los Gatos apartment, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my balcony, overlooking the lights of Silicon Valley. The view reminded me how far I had traveled, both literally and figuratively, from the woman who had once slept on Emma's couch while paying for everyone's streaming services. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. It was Kevin, Emma's son, writing from what was apparently a new phone number. Aunt Sarah, I heard you and Mom talked about the content creation program. I wanted you to know that I understand why you have concerns about it. I've been doing my own research, and some of the promises seem too good to be true. I'd really like to talk to you about other ways to develop my skills if you're still willing to help. The message surprised me in the best possible way. Kevin had clearly inherited more practical intelligence than his mother, and his willingness to question expensive solutions showed maturity beyond his 15 years. I texted back immediately. I'd love to talk with you about realistic approaches to building a content creation career. Are you free for a video call this weekend? His response came within minutes. Yes. Thank you for being willing to help, even though Mom is being difficult about everything. The honesty in his message made me smile. Kevin understood the family dynamics better than Emma gave him credit for, and he was mature enough to separate our adult conflicts from his own needs and goals. Our video call that weekend exceeded my expectations. Kevin was articulate, thoughtful, and refreshingly realistic about the challenges of building a sustainable creative career. He had been researching successful content creators and understood that consistent quality work over time mattered more than expensive shortcuts. More importantly, he was genuinely talented. His existing content showed creativity, technical skill, and an understanding of audience engagement that couldn't be taught in any coaching program. He didn't need professional development. He needed practical support and realistic guidance. I spent an hour walking him through the equipment setup I had researched, explaining why specific tools would improve his production quality, and how to gradually upgrade his technology as his skills developed. I also connected him with 3 Netflix creators who specialized in different content types and had agreed to provide informal mentorship. Kevin's enthusiasm was infectious, and his thoughtful questions demonstrated that he was approaching content creation as a craft to be developed rather than a lottery ticket to instant success. By the end of our conversation, I was confident that my investment in his actual needs would provide far more value than Emma's expensive coaching program. The equipment package I assembled for Kevin cost less than $3,000 but included everything he needed to produce professional quality content. More valuable were the connections I facilitated with established creators who could provide insights about audience development, monetization strategies, and the business side of creative work. Within a month, Kevin's content quality had improved dramatically, and his audience engagement metrics were climbing steadily. More importantly, he was developing sustainable work habits and realistic expectations about building a creative career over time. Emma, however, remained convinced that I had sabotaged her son's chances by refusing to fund the expensive program. She posted passive-aggressive messages on social media about family members who didn't support children's dreams, and Kevin reported that she frequently complained about my lack of investment in his future. The irony was that my actual investment in Kevin's development had already produced better results than the coaching program could have delivered. But because I hadn't written a $50,000 check, Emma viewed my support as inadequate charity rather than meaningful assistance. The situation crystallized something important about wealth and family relationships. Success had given me the resources to help people in substantial ways, but it had also revealed the extent to which some family members valued the money more than the relationships that generated it. 3 months after my meeting with Emma, I received an unexpected call from my parents. Dad's voice was strained when he asked if they could visit me in San Francisco for a serious conversation. The request was unusual enough that I agreed immediately, curious about what had prompted their first direct contact in over a year. They arrived on a Thursday evening, looking older and more fragile than I remembered. The stress of the past year had taken a visible toll, and I felt a complex mix of love, concern, and wariness as I welcomed them into my apartment. We settled in my living room with coffee, the silence stretching uncomfortably as they seemed to struggle with how to begin whatever conversation had brought them here. Finally, Mom spoke, her voice careful and measured. "Sarah, we want you to know that we've been following your success from a distance, and we're incredibly proud of what you've accomplished." "Thank you," I replied, waiting for the rest of whatever they had come to say. "We also want to apologize," Dad continued, "for the way things ended when you were living in Portland. We should have been more supportive when you tried to set boundaries, and we shouldn't have let Marcus and Emma treat you the way they did." The apology was unexpected and seemed genuine, but I sensed there was more to this conversation than parental regret. "We've been doing a lot of thinking about family and relationships and what really matters," Mom added. "And we've realized that we made some mistakes in prioritizing harmony over fairness." "What prompted this reflection?" I asked gently. Dad shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "We've been having some financial difficulties recently. More medical bills, and the house needs some major repairs that we can't afford. Marcus suggested that we ask you for help, but we realized that we have no right to do that after the way we treated you." The honesty was refreshing, even if it revealed that financial pressure had motivated their visit. At least they were acknowledging the connection between their past behavior and their current reluctance to ask for assistance. "We're not here to ask for money," Mom said quickly, seeming to read my thoughts. "We're here to ask if there's any possibility of rebuilding our relationship with you. We miss you, Sarah. We miss having you in our lives." The emotion in her voice was unmistakable, and I felt my own eyes filling with tears. Despite everything that had happened, these were my parents, and the love between us had never disappeared entirely. "I miss you too," I admitted. "But I need to know that any relationship we rebuild will be based on mutual respect, not financial convenience." "We understand that now," Dad said. "We watched how Emma treated you when she visited, and it made us realize how we had all been taking advantage of your generosity without appreciating the person behind it." "Emma told you about her visit?" I asked, surprised that she had shared details about our disagreement. "She told everyone about how you refused to invest in Kevin's future," Mom explained. "But Kevin also told us about the equipment and mentorship you actually provided, and how much more helpful that support has been than what she originally wanted." The fact that my parents understood the difference between Emma's request and my actual assistance gave me hope that they might have genuinely learned something from our family conflicts. We spent the next several hours talking through our relationship, the patterns that had developed around money and support, and how we might interact differently going forward. The conversation was sometimes difficult but always honest, and by the end of the evening I felt cautiously optimistic about the possibility of rebuilding trust with my parents. They stayed for the weekend, and I took them on tours of the Netflix campus and introduced them to some of my colleagues. Seeing their pride in my achievements, their genuine interest in my work, and their efforts to understand my world helped heal wounds I hadn't fully acknowledged were still bleeding. When they prepared to leave on Sunday, Dad pulled me aside for a private conversation. "Sarah, I want you to know that we do have financial concerns, and there may come a time when we need to ask for help. But if that happens, we'll approach you as our daughter who we respect and value, not as a solution to problems we should handle ourselves." The distinction was important, and his willingness to articulate it showed that he understood what had gone wrong in our previous interactions. "I appreciate that, Dad. And when that time comes, we'll figure out together what kind of support makes sense for everyone involved." As I watched them drive away from my apartment complex, I reflected on how much our family dynamics had shifted over the past 2 years. Success had given me the power to choose which relationships to invest in and under what conditions. More importantly, it had taught me that healthy relationships required mutual respect regardless of financial disparities. My parents had taken the first steps toward rebuilding our connection on a foundation of honesty and appreciation, rather than obligation and guilt. Emma continued to view me primarily as a resource she was entitled to access. Marcus remained largely absent from my life, apparently content to maintain his narrative about my character rather than examine his own behavior. The differences in their approaches revealed something profound about human nature and family dynamics. People could choose to grow and adapt when circumstances changed, or they could cling to patterns that no longer served anyone involved. As the sun set over Silicon Valley, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, I felt grateful for the lessons that financial success had taught me about relationships, boundaries, and self-worth. The woman who had once slept in her car, rather than continue enabling family members who didn't respect her, had become someone who could offer support from a position of strength rather than desperation. The streaming passwords that had started everything seemed like a lifetime ago, but they had taught me the most valuable lesson of all, that love without respect was just another form of exploitation, and that true family relationships required both giving and receiving in equal measure. My phone buzzed with a text from Kevin, sharing his latest content creation milestone and thanking me again for believing in his potential enough to invest in his actual development rather than expensive promises. His success was deeply satisfying, not because of the money I had spent, but because I had been able to provide support that genuinely helped him grow. That was the difference between charity and investment, between enabling and empowering, between buying temporary peace and building lasting relationships. Success had given me the resources to make those distinctions, and the wisdom to choose the path that honored both my values and my boundaries. As I prepared for another week of meetings and strategic planning at Netflix, I felt profound gratitude for the journey that had brought me to this point. The pain of family betrayal had ultimately led to personal transformation, professional success, and a much clearer understanding of my own worth. Sometimes, the greatest gift people can give you is showing you exactly who they are and what they value. My family had given me that gift, painful as it was, and I had used it to build something far more valuable than any streaming service could provide, a life that belonged entirely to me. The annual tech conference in Las Vegas was Netflix's biggest public event of the year. As VP of Independent Creator Relations, I was scheduled to deliver the keynote address about the future of creator monetization. The auditorium held 3,000 attendees, including journalists, industry executives, and content creators from around the world. Backstage, I adjusted my presentation slides one final time, reviewing the statistics that would demonstrate StreamShare's revolutionary impact on independent creator earnings. The numbers were staggering. Average creator income had increased by 600% since the platform integration, and over 50,000 new creators had joined the ecosystem. My phone buzzed with a message from Jessica, my assistant. "Sarah, there's a situation developing in the main lobby. Security is asking for guidance about some individuals claiming to be your family members who are demanding access to the conference." I felt my stomach drop. Today was supposed to be my professional triumph, the moment when I would announce the next phase of creator support programs to the entire industry. The last thing I needed was family drama playing out in front of journalists and business partners. "Can you describe the individuals?" I texted back. 3 people. A man in his late 20s, a woman around 35, and an older woman, probably mid-60s. They don't have conference credentials but insist they need to speak with you urgently about a family emergency. Marcus, Emma, and someone I couldn't immediately identify. The timing was too coincidental to be accidental. They had somehow discovered that I would be speaking at this high-profile event and had traveled to Las Vegas to confront me publicly. "Tell security to escort them to conference room 7 and have them wait there." "I'll handle this after my presentation," I replied. But as I walked toward the stage entrance, another message arrived from Jessica. "They're refusing to wait privately. They're telling other attendees that you're abandoning family members in crisis and using your wealth to silence them. This is creating a scene." The manipulation was breathtaking, even by my family's standards. They had turned my professional event into a platform for emotional blackmail, counting on my desire to avoid public embarrassment to force a confrontation on their terms. I made a decision that surprised even myself. Send security to bring them into the auditorium. Have them seated in the front row where I can see them during my presentation. "Sarah, are you sure about this?" Jessica responded immediately. "This could backfire spectacularly." "I'm certain. Let them hear exactly who I've become and what I've built, while they were writing me off as selfish." 20 minutes later, I walked onto the stage to thunderous applause, immediately spotting Marcus, Emma, and my Aunt Patricia in the front row. Patricia had always been the family instigator, the one who stirred up drama, and then positioned herself as the peacemaker. Her presence explained how they had coordinated this ambush. "Good morning," I began, my voice carrying clearly across the packed auditorium. "I'm here today to talk about revolution in content creation, about empowering independent artists, and about building systems that value creativity over corporate gatekeeping. I launched into my presentation, discussing StreamShare's impact on creator earnings and announcing new programs that would further democratize content monetization. But I was also speaking directly to the 3 people in the front row who had spent years treating my creativity and financial acumen as resources they were entitled to exploit. The irony wasn't lost on me that Marcus, who had once dismissed my career as staring at a computer screen, was now listening to me address an audience of industry leaders about innovations that would reshape how creative people made their living. When we talk about supporting creators, I continued, we're really talking about recognizing value where others see risk. About investing in people's potential rather than their current circumstances. About building sustainable systems, rather than expecting individual sacrifice to solve systemic problems. Emma shifted uncomfortably in her seat, apparently recognizing references to our recent conflicts about supporting Kevin's development versus funding expensive shortcuts. The most successful creators in our platform share certain characteristics, I explained to the audience. They're willing to develop their skills gradually, rather than expecting instant success. They understand that authentic audience engagement matters more than expensive production values. And they take responsibility for their own growth, rather than depending on others to fund their dreams. Marcus's face had grown increasingly red as the presentation continued. He clearly understood that my professional success was partly built on lessons learned from his exploitation, and that my current platform allowed me to share those insights with thousands of influential people. After 45 minutes, I concluded my presentation to sustained applause and a standing ovation. Industry journalists approached the stage for follow-up interviews, but my family remained seated, apparently waiting for their opportunity to confront me privately. Ms. Chen, called out a reporter from TechCrunch, your work has been described as transformative for independent creators. What personal experiences shaped your approach to supporting artists? The question offered the perfect opportunity to address my family's presence without acknowledging them directly. I've learned that genuine support means helping people develop their capabilities rather than enabling dependence, I replied. The most meaningful assistance provides tools and opportunities for growth, not temporary financial relief that solves immediate problems without addressing underlying challenges. As the press interviews concluded, I finally made my way to where Marcus, Emma, and Patricia were waiting near the stage. The contrast between my professional triumph and their obvious discomfort created a surreal moment of role reversal. Sarah, Patricia began immediately, we need to talk privately about a serious family situation. Your grandmother is in the hospital, and there are decisions that need to be made about her care. The mention of my grandmother hit me with genuine concern, but I was also wary of another manipulation attempt. What's wrong with Grandma Rose? I asked. She fell last week and broke her hip, Emma explained. She needs surgery, but her insurance doesn't cover all the costs. The family is trying to figure out how to handle the medical bills. How much are we talking about? I asked, though I suspected this was building toward another financial request. About $30,000 after insurance, Marcus said. We've all contributed what we can, but it's not enough. We need your help to make sure she gets the surgery she needs. The emotional leverage was expertly deployed. My beloved grandmother's health needs, presented as a crisis requiring immediate financial intervention. But something about their presentation felt rehearsed, as if they had coordinated their approach carefully. When did this happen? I asked. And why wasn't I contacted immediately if it was such an emergency? Patricia and Emma exchanged glances before Patricia responded. We tried calling you several times, but your assistant said you were in meetings and couldn't be disturbed. We finally decided to come here because we knew you'd be available. That was completely false. I had received no emergency calls, and Jessica would have immediately put through any genuine family crisis. They were lying about their attempts to contact me, which made me question everything else about their story. I need to verify the details about Grandma Rose's condition before I can consider any financial assistance, I said carefully. Can you give me the name of her hospital and attending physician? Why do you need to verify anything? Marcus demanded, his voice rising with frustration. She's your grandmother, Sarah. Don't you care enough to help her, without conducting some kind of investigation? The accusation was designed to make me feel guilty for exercising basic due diligence, but I have learned too much about manipulation to be swayed by emotional pressure tactics. I care enough to make sure any assistance I provide actually helps her, rather than funding something else entirely, I replied. If this is a genuine medical emergency, you should welcome verification rather than resenting it. Patricia stepped forward with her practiced peacemaker persona. Sarah, I understand you've had some conflicts with parts of the family, but this isn't about old grudges. This is about Rose getting the medical care she needs. Then providing hospital contact information should be simple, I said. I'll call them directly to discuss payment options and make sure Grandma Rose receives appropriate care. The three of them exchanged looks that confirmed my suspicions. Their story was either greatly exaggerated or entirely fabricated, designed to create urgency that would bypass my critical thinking. You know what? Marcus said suddenly, his mask of concern slipping to reveal underlying anger. Forget it. We should have known you'd find ways to avoid helping your own family. Success really has changed you, Sarah. The familiar accusation no longer carried any emotional weight. I had heard variations of it too many times from people who wanted access to my resources without accepting accountability for their own choices. Success has given me the ability to help people effectively rather than enabling destructive patterns, I replied calmly. If Grandma Rose genuinely needs medical assistance, I'll provide it directly to her healthcare providers. But I won't hand over money based on unverified claims and emotional manipulation. Emma finally exploded with the anger she had been containing. You're seriously going to stand there in your expensive dress, talking about family manipulation, while your grandmother suffers because you're too paranoid to trust your own family? The outburst attracted attention from conference attendees who were still mingling in the auditorium. Several industry colleagues glanced over with concern, clearly wondering if I needed assistance with an uncomfortable situation. I'm going to end this conversation now, I said firmly. If any of you have legitimate concerns about Grandma Rose's health, you can contact my assistant with verified medical information. Otherwise, I have professional obligations to attend to. As I walked away from them, I heard Patricia's voice calling after me. Don't expect us to welcome you back into this family after you've shown your true priorities, Sarah. Money has made you cold and selfish. The threat of family exclusion might have devastated the old Sarah, but it held no power over the woman I had become. I had built my own family of colleagues and friends who valued my contributions rather than my bank account. Later that evening, back in my hotel suite, I called my parents to verify the story about my grandmother. As I suspected, Grandma Rose was fine, living independently and in good health. She had not fallen, was not hospitalized, and needed no emergency medical intervention. The entire story had been fabricated to create a crisis that would justify demanding money from me. Marcus, Emma, and Patricia had coordinated an elaborate deception, traveling to Las Vegas and disrupting my professional event to execute their plan. The discovery filled me with a mixture of sadness and relief. Sadness that family members would go to such lengths to manipulate me, but relief that I had trusted my instincts and refused to be pressured into another financial rescue. My parents were horrified when I told them what had happened. Dad's voice was tight with anger as he promised to contact Marcus and Emma about their behavior. But I asked him not to intervene. Their actions had revealed their true character more clearly than any confrontation could. The next morning, industry publications covered my keynote presentation extensively, with several articles highlighting the innovative creator support programs I had announced. The professional success felt especially meaningful because I had achieved it while maintaining my personal integrity despite family pressure. 6 months later, I received a wedding invitation that surprised me completely. Kevin, Emma's son, was inviting me to his graduation ceremony from high school. He had built a successful content creation business, using the equipment and mentorship I had provided, earning enough to help support his family while preparing for college. His success story had been featured in several media outlets as an example of how young creators could build sustainable careers through consistent effort and smart resource allocation. Emma had never acknowledged my role in his development, but Kevin understood that my practical support had been more valuable than any expensive program could have provided. The graduation ceremony was small and intimate, held at Kevin's high school in Portland. I sat in the back, not wanting to create family drama on his special day. But when Kevin gave his valedictorian speech, He specifically thanked me for believing in his potential and providing tools rather than empty promises. Emma was in the audience, and when our eyes met across the gymnasium, I saw something I had never expected. Acknowledgement. Not gratitude exactly, but recognition that my approach to supporting Kevin had produced better results than her expensive shortcuts. After the ceremony, Kevin approached me with a check for $5,000. Aunt Sarah, this represents my first significant earnings from content creation. I want to start paying back the investment you made in my equipment and education. The gesture was completely unexpected and deeply moving. Kevin, you don't owe me anything, I said. That money was a gift to support your development. I know, he replied, but accepting it as a gift would make me like the rest of our family. I want to show you that your investment produced real value, and I want to earn the right to ask for your advice in the future. His maturity and integrity were remarkable for someone just graduating high school. I accepted the check, not because I needed the money, but because I understood that repaying it was important for his sense of self-respect and independence. That evening, I drove through Portland's familiar streets, reflecting on how much had changed since I first moved here to help my family. The woman who had slept in her car rather than continue enabling destructive patterns had become someone who could offer support from a position of strength and wisdom. The streaming passwords that started everything seemed like ancient history now, but they had taught me the most valuable lesson possible: that genuine love requires boundaries, that real support empowers rather than enables, and that family relationships must be based on mutual respect rather than financial obligation. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake Morrison, asking about my plans for the weekend. We had been dating for several months, building a relationship based on shared values and mutual admiration, rather than need or convenience. As I drove toward the airport for my flight back to San Francisco, I felt profound gratitude for the journey that had brought me to this point. Success had given me choices about how to spend my time, energy, and resources. More importantly, it had taught me to value myself appropriately and to expect the same from others. The family that had once used my Netflix password while blocking my number would have to watch from a distance as I built an empire they could never access. But Kevin's success proved that when support was offered with wisdom rather than enabling, it could transform lives and create genuine value for everyone involved. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give people is refusing to rescue them from the consequences of their choices. My family had taught me that lesson through their rejection, and I had used it to build something far more valuable than any streaming service could provide: a life defined by my own values and choices rather than other people's expectations and demands. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.